12 African presidents sat in silence, not because they were unsure of what was about to happen, but because deep down, they knew. Some glanced at the walls. No flags, no portraits, just one long black table, and at the end of it, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Before we continue, please give us a like and subscribe. He didn't speak right away. He didn't need to. Every man in that room had arrived with questions, but what they were about to hear would leave them with consequences. Finally, Traoré leaned forward. "You all saw the footage, didn't you?" he said, his voice low but deliberate. The U.S. reception. Trump standing on that podium, grinning like a man watching a circus act. He paused. No one interrupted. The moment the Liberian president greeted him, and Trump laughed, "He speaks good English," like he'd just discovered a dog could walk on two legs. His tone sharpened. That wasn't diplomacy. That was mockery, and you all smiled. Someone shifted in their chair. Someone else looked away. Traoré sat back, disgusted. "I didn't call this meeting to argue about aid packages or investment deals. I called it because Africa is being walked like a dog in front of the world. And some of you are handing over the leash." He let the words sink in. "You visit Washington, Paris, Brussels. You pose for photos, you eat their food, and you leave with promises written on paper that burns the moment your plane takes off. And what do they give you, really?" No one answered. "I'll tell you what they give you," he continued. "Debt, troops, a smile on camera, and a target on your back." A few eyes widened. Traoré slid a folder across the table. No one opened it. They didn't have to. They'd seen that kind of folder before. Inside is surveillance, US satellites, phone taps, dossiers on your children, your wives, your inner circles. One of you, he looked around slowly, has already had your son approached by a Western intelligence officer in Europe. They are grooming him to replace you. No names, no need. A sharp breath from one end of the table, a clenched jaw at the other. This isn't a theory. This is what happens when you kneel. You think you're signing partnerships. You're signing your obituary. President Owusu of Ghana cleared his throat. "What exactly are you suggesting, Traoré?" "We turn our backs completely. Isolation hasn't worked for anyone." "I'm not suggesting isolation," Traoré said calmly. "I'm suggesting self-respect. I'm suggesting that for 2 years, just 2 years, we stop crawling to the West like beggars. No more presidential visits to Washington. No more handshakes with people who see us as pets. We build our own stage." "And who funds this new stage?" someone asked. Traoré reached under the table and dropped a small, gold-plated device in front of him. A portable drive. "On here is the preliminary agreement for a new financial bloc. 4 nations have already committed gold reserves. Another 2 have agreed to lithium. We have assets. We've just forgotten how to use them without asking permission first." He tapped the drive gently. "There's also a proposal for a Pan-African media network, controlled by no foreign agency, no Western advertisers, just us, our voice." He stood slowly. "You know what the Americans fear most? It's not China. It's not Russia. It's us. If we ever wake up, if we ever stop asking for permission and start writing our own script." President Diawara of Senegal leaned forward. "And if we don't?" Traoré looked directly at him. "Then don't be surprised when your plane crashes under mysterious circumstances. Don't be shocked when rebels with weapons made in Europe suddenly have your convoy routes. Don't act surprised when your economy collapses 2 weeks after you sign a trade deal with France." The room fell into a dark silence. "Western friendship comes at the price of your people's dignity, and I will no longer pay it." He walked around the table, pausing behind each chair, letting his presence settle like smoke. I'm not asking all of you to join me today, but I am telling you this. A line is being drawn. And very soon, your people will ask which side of it you stood on. He turned and began walking toward the exit. Behind him, hands slowly raised. Not all, but more than half. The president of Kenya signed a small slip of paper, folding it and sliding it to the center of the table. Ghana followed, then Mali, then Niger. Some held back, cautious, calculating. But the seed had been planted, and once planted, revolution has a way of growing faster than fear. Outside, the storm clouds over Ouagadougou had begun to gather, not of rain, but of change. And this time, Africa was not asking for permission. 2 weeks had passed. What began as a quiet agreement among a handful of presidents in the mountains of Burkina Faso had begun to echo across African capitals. The West hadn't responded publicly, not yet, but behind closed doors, embassies were buzzing. Intelligence cables were burning. In Abidjan, a high-level meeting was quietly cancelled. In Nairobi, a presidential trip to Washington was postponed indefinitely. African media outlets began whispering about a new bloc, but no one had details. That was exactly how Traoré wanted it. But then, the silence broke. It started with a single broadcast. A short clip, aired on a French news channel, showing the president of Côte d'Ivoire standing beside a U.S. senator in Washington, smiling, arms raised. They called it a strategic bilateral meeting. Traoré saw it for what it was, a betrayal. The video reached him by encrypted tablet. He watched it twice, then locked the screen and called for his chief of intelligence. "Is it confirmed?" he asked. The response was immediate. Yes, it was not an accidental drop-in. He flew in with his full delegation. The Americans arranged it quietly. They didn't expect footage to leak so soon. Traoré stared at the blank screen. He didn't speak for a while. "Contact the others," he finally said. "We hold an emergency call. No interpreters, no advisors, just us." The virtual meeting was live within hours. On screen, the faces of 6 African presidents appeared, framed by bookshelves, marble walls, and security guards just outside the frame. Traoré didn't waste time. "Côte d'Ivoire has broken the pact." Gasps. 2 heads dropped. One clenched his fist. "He did not just go to Washington," Traoré continued. "He allowed the meeting to be filmed. He gave them the headline they needed. The African bloc is crumbling." That's what the world is reading right now. President Ndongala of the DRC was furious. What did they offer him? "Land rights," someone answered, "and weapons." Traoré shook his head. They offered him comfort. They offered him the illusion that siding with them is safer than siding with us. Then he leaned closer to the camera. But this is where they miscalculated. The call ended after 12 minutes. 3 hours later, a flight from Abidjan to Paris was diverted due to technical issues. On board was a senior Ivorian trade advisor, en route to finalize an agreement with a French arms firm. He was intercepted mid-air. French media didn't report it. The Burkina government didn't claim it. But the man never arrived in Paris, and he never returned to Côte d'Ivoire. The message was clear. This time, betrayal had consequences. By morning, 5 more African leaders had signed Traoré's digital accord. Anonymous, but binding. They weren't aligning with Burkina Faso. They were aligning with survival. In Johannesburg, a major news channel ran a headline: "The Shadow Alliance. Is a new Africa emerging?" And then, something unexpected happened. The Ivorian president went silent. No public appearances, no media statements. Even his social media pages went black. Whispers emerged that he had been warned, that his convoy had encountered technical difficulties, that one of his own military generals had defected to Traoré's bloc overnight. Whatever the truth, the effect was immediate. Across West Africa, leaders who had once dismissed Traoré as a bold young soldier were now rethinking his strategy. He wasn't just a symbol anymore. He was a movement, and the world had begun to notice. Inside a command room in Ouagadougou, Traoré watched live drone feeds, not of enemy positions, but of African cities, crowds chanting his name, murals painted on walls, young men wearing camouflage berets and quoting his speeches. "This is not about me," he said quietly to his aide. "This is about reminding Africa that we don't need permission to stand up." He turned to the window, the wind pulling at the curtain beside him. "And anyone who kneels now does it at their own risk. The old wars were fought with bullets. The new war would be fought with cameras." Inside a quiet compound just outside Ouagadougou, Traoré stood in what looked like a tech startup lab. Cables, screens, satellite feeds, AI servers humming. No soldiers, no weapons, just data. He tapped a large digital map. A cluster of red dots glowed over key cities: Lagos, Dakar, Nairobi, Kinshasa, Accra. "These are the targets," he said to the two media directors beside him, one from Guinea, the other from Mali. "We don't need to march on these capitals. We need to take them through truth." Or, what the world would soon believe was truth. For months, his teams had been building something quietly, beneath the radar, a decentralized African broadcasting network, independent of Western platforms. The name, a UBE. The Dawn. Aube would not be based in any one country. Its hosts would be anonymous. Its content distributed on mirrored servers in at least 12 nations. The goal was simple: flood the narrative, drown the colonial echo chamber, make the African story louder than the American version. That evening, the first broadcast went live. No flag, no anthem, just a black screen and then a voice. "Africa does not need saviors. We are not your projects. We are not your experiments. We are not impressed by your visits." Then the footage played. Traoré speaking at the secret summit, images of Trump's condescending moment with the Liberian president, a breakdown of foreign military bases, a map of Africa showing how many ports were owned by companies outside the continent. Faces blurred, data verified. Every clip hit like a hammer. By midnight, the video had been translated into 9 languages, over 22 million views across anonymous accounts. In Nairobi, university students projected the video on a wall in the city center. In Bamako, graffiti began to appear. "We are not your puppets." The West scrambled. A US official called it deepfake propaganda. France claimed it was Russian-backed. But the damage was done. The people weren't listening to rebuttals. They were hearing themselves for the first time. The next morning, 4 more African leaders signed Traoré's digital media charter. No more press conferences through Reuters. No more interviews with BBC or France 24. All communications would go through Aube or African state media. Traoré stood before the cameras the next night. This time, no uniform. Just a simple black shirt, a calm face, a direct message. "If your people only hear you through foreign voices," he said, "you are not leading them. You are babysitting them for the empire." He stared into the lens. "From today forward, we speak for ourselves." The video lasted only 47 seconds. It triggered diplomatic chaos. The French embassy in Dakar issued a formal complaint. Washington threatened sanctions. The EU froze a $230 million infrastructure deal with Mali. And Traoré smiled. "They've shown their hand," he told his advisors. "They never supported our growth, only their access." His voice dropped. "And now we've cut the pipeline." In private, some African presidents panicked. Losing aid could cost them re-election. Losing trade deals might shake fragile economies. They reached out to the UN quietly, distancing themselves. But the damage was done. Even their people had seen the broadcasts. The pressure wasn't from the West anymore. It was coming from within. Young Africans, once apathetic, were now chanting in the streets, "Talk to us, not through them." Traoré met with his cabinet late that night. They expected a victory speech. Instead, he gave them a warning. "They will come at us now, not with tanks, with rumors, with bribes, with fear. They will try to divide us, to buy those sitting at this very table." He looked around the room. "Some of you will be offered everything you've ever wanted, just to step away from this moment. I'm telling you now, they will not be negotiating with you. They will be buying your silence." No one spoke. "And if you sell it," he added, "you are selling your future, and the continents with it." Outside, the city of Ouagadougou was already awake. On walls, new posters had gone up, not of Traoré, but of something else. A map of Africa, uncut, unbroken, with a microphone planted in its center. The war had shifted. It was no longer about borders. It was about voice. And for the first time in generations, Africa had one that the world couldn't ignore and couldn't control. 3 weeks after the launch of Outrage, the world began to shift. The West hadn't declared war, not with weapons, but the silence was louder than bombs. Grants vanished overnight. Trade talks stalled. Internet nodes slowed mysteriously in Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey. Officials received strange warnings from anonymous diplomats. Cyber attacks hit 2 government databases in Guinea. Traoré knew it wasn't coincidence. They had crossed a line, and the empire had noticed. At a private briefing with his cyber command team, Traoré stood beside a glowing wall of network data. "They'll try to shut Outrage down," he said. "They know if they lose the narrative, they lose control." His lead technician looked up. "It's already started. We traced a sophisticated breach attempt on our Ghana hub. Origin, Brussels. Masked through a Saudi server." He nodded calmly. "Reroute through Mali and start air-gapped backups in Burkina. No foreign hardware, no Western platforms." They all understood what was at stake. Outrage wasn't just media, it was the heartbeat of a new African identity. And now it had a target on its back. Then came the betrayal. At first, it was a whisper. In the early hours of a quiet morning, a report reached Traoré's inner circle. President Ndongala of the DRC had initiated secret communications with both the US and France. It wasn't just diplomacy. It was a full proposal, a quiet exit from the bloc. In exchange, military aid, new mining contracts, and protection. By midday, confirmation came. An encrypted copy of the proposal arrived on Traoré's desk. He read it word for word. Then he requested a secure line. Not to confront Ndongala publicly, to speak to him alone. The screen flickered. The face of the Congolese president appeared, tired but defiant. Traoré didn't raise his voice. "You didn't even wait a month," Ndongala breathed out slowly. "My people are starving, Ibrahim. Aid has stopped. Roads are blocked. Our factories can't export. I made a choice. You made a deal. I made a decision to survive." "You made a decision to submit," Traoré said. Ndongala leaned forward. "You don't understand. You've got momentum. The streets chant your name. But I have rebels at my doorstep. I have Western-trained generals in my own military. If I push further, they'll remove me. I'll be dead within a year." Traoré didn't flinch. "Then at least you'll die standing." Silence. "Do you know what they call you now in Paris?" Traoré continued. "They call you the insurance plan, because if this African project fails, they believe you will inherit what's left." Ndongala didn't deny it. "I'm not your enemy, Ibrahim. You are when you shake hands in the dark with the people who've held our throats for 60 years. A long pause, then Traoré ended the call. That night, a storm hit Kinshasa, and so did something else. Across social media, documents leaked, not from Ouagadougou, but from an anonymous whistleblower. The Congolese betrayal went viral. Footage of the proposal, signed with the presidential seal, was confirmed by 3 independent sources. It was undeniable. The people turned. Protests erupted in Goma, Bukavu, and even in Kinshasa's own capital district. Youth leaders burned foreign flags and demanded Ndongala's resignation. But Traoré said nothing. No press conference. No statement. The silence was louder than any speech. He was learning something now. Something dangerous. He didn't need to speak to lead. His movement had outgrown him. That terrified his enemies even more. The following day, a summit was held in Bamako. Traoré arrived late, without bodyguards, in plain clothes. When he entered the room, even the doubters stood. He didn't ask for pledges. He didn't ask for loyalty. He simply said, "We keep building." Then he laid out the next phase. An African banking system, digital first, backed by mineral wealth, with no Western underwriters. A cultural alliance to fund film, art, and music across the continent. To reclaim the story of Africa. A defense initiative, not for invasion, but for sovereignty. If any one state was attacked, all would respond. One by one, leaders nodded. Some hesitated, but none walked out. The final motion passed by silent consensus. Africa, at least the Africa that was awake, had chosen its path. That night, from the window of his temporary residence in Bamako, Traoré looked down on a crowd gathered with candles. They weren't chanting his name. They were chanting unity. He smiled, then stepped back into the dark. He knew the empire wasn't finished. There would be more attempts to corrupt, divide, assassinate, destabilize. But now, the difference was clear. Africa had seen what it looked like to stand. And once people have seen that image, bold, unashamed, self-defined, it's almost impossible to return to silence. The war wasn't over, but the silence was. Please give us a like and subscribe.